A revolution in the way we think of ourselves is sweeping the world. It's forcing us to rewrite the story of our origins, our past, how long we've been here, and where we're going. This revolution in thinking feels like a major magnitude earthquake. It's registering off the scale of new ideas as it levels some of the most cherished beliefs of conventional science. In its wake is left a wide swath of outdated teachings, demanding the reevaluation of long-held traditions and destroying the legacy of entire careers. The reason? Discoveries have shown that many of the scientific facts that we've trusted for centuries to explain the universe and our role in it are flawed. An obsolete paradigm of the universe and our relationship to it was based upon a series of scientific assumptions, false assumptions, that can no longer be taught as fact in light of the new evidence. There is a single question that lurks at the very core of our existence. It's the unspoken question lying beneath every choice we'll ever make. It lives within every challenge that will ever test us, and it's the foundation for every decision we'll ever face. If God had a cosmic question counter to track the things that we humans wonder about most, I have no doubt it would have maxed out and returned to zero so often in registering this one question alone, that even God would have lost count of how many times it's been asked. The question at the root of all questions, one that has been asked countless times by countless individuals throughout the estimated 200,000 years or so that we've been on Earth, is simply this: who are we? Who are we? And while the question itself appears simple and brief, the way we answer it has implications that we simply cannot escape. It tears directly into the heart of each moment of our lives by forming the lens that defines the way we see ourselves in the world and the choices we make. The meaning that we give to these three words permeates the very fabric of our society, and it shows up in everything we do, from the way we choose the food that nourishes our bodies to how we care for ourselves and our youngest children and our aging parents. Our answer to who are we underlies the core principles of civilization itself. It influences how we share resources like food and water and medicine and other necessities of life, when and why we go to war, and what our economy is based upon. What we believe about our past, our origin, our history, our destiny, and our fate even justifies our thinking regarding when we choose to save a human life and when we choose to end it. In what may be the greatest irony of our existence, at the dawn of the 21st century, following more than 5,000 years of recorded history, we have still not clearly answered this most basic question about ourselves. And while at any time discovering the truth of our existence would be worth the time and energy and resources needed to do so, as we currently face the greatest crises affecting life and survival in the memory of our species, it is especially critical for our time, here and now. One good reason for us to know who we are stands above all others. Maybe it's no coincidence that today, after 3 centuries of using the scientific method to answer the most basic question about ourselves, we also find ourselves in deep trouble here on Earth. And it's not just any old run-of-the-mill kind of trouble that we're in. It's the kind of trouble that dramatic novels and science fiction blockbusters are made of. And just to be absolutely clear, it's not Earth that's in trouble. It's us, the people who live here on Earth. You and I, when we were in school, I would imagine everyone in this room and your children, if they're in school, and your grandchildren, if they're in school, are all being taught that we are the product of random mutations and evolution, Darwin's theory. So I want to be really clear about this. I am in no way down on Darwin. I respect him tremendously. Darwin could not possibly have known in 1859, when he released his theory, what we know today. Also, I was just in London before COVID, and Darwin's granddaughter was in my audience, great-granddaughter, I guess. And I didn't know it until after the talks. Probably good that I didn't know it. But she came up and she thanked me for the perspective that I'm about to share with you. So evolution, as a geologist, I'm a degreed earth scientist. I'm a geologist. I went to school right up the road here in Colorado State and in Denver. I'm not denying evolution. I've been called an evolution denier. I'm not. Evolution is a fact, and I want to be really clear. It's a fact in the fossil record. I've seen it, plants, animals, insects. I'm not questioning the validity of evolution. What I'm saying is it is valid until it comes to us. Evolution as a theory breaks down in the face of the evidence that has been revealed about human origins. It doesn't tell us what did happen, but it tells us what did not happen. You and I are not the product of random mutations that evolve slowly, gradually over a long period of time. And I'm going to show you the evidence to support this. I love it when these come up because it really reinforces that that's not our story. Now, some of you have seen these before, but I have to share this because some of you have not. This is called the evolutionary family tree. I think most of you probably have seen this when you were in school. I didn't make this up. This is right out of the Encyclopedia Britannica. This is what's being taught today. Here is us right there, modern humans. We're called anatomically modern humans, AMH. And those little green lines that connect us to these other forms of life, if you look closely at those, every one of them is a dashed line or a broken line with a question mark in the middle. And the chart's very honest. It will tell you in the legend, and I'm going to highlight this so you can see it, that dashed line, it means that these are inferred or speculative relationships. They have never been proven. There is no physical evidence to prove them. There has never been physical evidence to prove these relationships. And we know that. And what scientists say, my scientist colleague friends, they say, well, we just haven't looked in the right place. 150 years of the best scientific minds, the most money from the best universities with the greatest technology, searching for these links. I would think we would be a little closer than we are right now, if the theory were accurate. So rather than allowing, and this is so important, rather than allowing the data to lead to the story that it tells, we are forcing our young people to take the data and force the data into a predetermined story. It's like a square peg in a round hole. If you pound hard enough, you can get a square peg in a round hole. It's just never a good fit. There's spaces around it. Not a good fit. Evolution is not a good fit when it comes to us, okay? But it's taught as fact, and there's no other theory that's allowed in public education. In Western societies, in Western Europe and in the United States, Canada, Mexico, they won't allow any other theories. They are fighting tooth and nail to hang on to this story because it is a disempowering story. Because they believe that if it's not evolution, it's binary. They say if it's not evolution, now it must be a religion. And nobody is saying that. And nobody believes that necessarily. The scientists, they're saying this is not our story, but they will not share. Here, I'm going to show you right now. Let's look at this. Discovery number 13, DNA. I mentioned this earlier. If you saw the movie Jurassic Park, this used to be science fiction. Now it's science fact. We can go into the fossilized remains of ancient forms of life, into the bone marrow that's preserved. We can extract the DNA and we can build a genome from that DNA, just like they did in Jurassic Park. Now, to the best of my knowledge, we haven't brought those life forms back to life, but you know they're trying. Somebody's basement. Is it your basement? Are you trying? Somebody's basement. They've got DNA from a brontosaurus, you know, and we're probably going to see one walking down the streets of Boulder someday or something. I don't know. We can extract that DNA, and that is a game changer because it now allows us, I want you to see, here's actually what, that's the DNA right there. That's what fossilized DNA looks like from the bone marrow. Now we can build the genome from these ancient forms of life and run it through the computer and match it to the genome of us today or other forms of life. We can do that. Guess what? There's not enough similarity to confirm or support the theory that we have descended from other forms of life. As a matter of fact, when it comes to Neanderthal, we shared the earth with them. We walked the earth with Neanderthal. We couldn't have descended from them because we shared the earth with them. You can't
It's
go back to
emerging.
a world that no longer exists. So for me, the real opportunity here, if we're going to evolve and transcend and literally thrive, that it's possible to thrive in the new world, changing the way we think, we begin by thinking differently about ourselves. And I think people are willing to do it if they have a good reason. And the science, peer-reviewed science, is now giving us the reason to see ourselves in a world of cooperation, to see ourselves as something very precious. Life is so precious and very unique and very special, rather than devalue the human life. There's something very unique, very precious, very special about human life, and that's different than teaching evolution that's very sterile, that says these random mutations just happen at the right time, and here we are. And the reflection of that thinking, human life is so devalued, it's not relished, it's not cherished. The only way to create the kind of hate that we see in the world today is because the thinking that is underlying that hate says this life has no value. And so when we begin to change that, then there's an opening to cooperate for the kind of things that you're talking about right now. And because we begin to think, how can we give and contribute to the world rather than how can I get? And how can that help me? And that's a very different way of thinking.
As you suggest, there's a philosophical shift that has to happen, almost an existential kind of philosophic framework that starts to say, who am I? How's this world work? Everything else in a whole kind of different way. And as you know, I've spent some time trying to think about this emergent kind of new world, and you have to start with what are the underlying principles, the underpinnings of that frame your perspective of how the world works, and who am I, and how does this larger work, and what's
Well, it's reflected, the new economy, for example. We know the economy that we have right now, it affects everyone. And it's unsustainable in the way it is. And I just want to say to our viewers, when I talk about economies, it doesn't always mean money. It can. But I've been in parts of the world that have very successful economies and there's no money involved. So economies aren't so much about money. It's about us. It's about people and relationships and how we share the vital resources that we need every day: food, water, medicine. Money can be a part of that. But that thinking is changing now. And when that fundamental shift occurs, then it makes sense. Then we want to come together and build clean, green, renewable sources of living. And here's the key for me. The better we know ourselves, the less we fear change in the world. And the better we know ourselves, the less we fear one another. The universe is dead and inert, and the product of what is called lucky physics, where the conditions just happen to occur in just the right way at just the right time for the universe to form as it has formed. Now, there's a consequence to that thinking, because if you honestly believe, consciously and subconsciously in your mind and your heart, that the universe is just a product of lucky physics, if you believe that the universe is dead and everything is separate from everything else, that gives the powers that be the reason to think in terms of the earth being ours to exploit, to dominate, to harness the powers and the forces, because there's no reason to think otherwise. The universe is an accident. It's dead. It's separate. It's inert. That thinking is reflected throughout our culture and our society and our history. It's reflected as a lack of respect for the natural world, for example. I remember when I was growing up in the Midwest of the United States in the 1950s, 1960s, and the interstate highway system had just been built. They were building this after the Second World War, originally to transport military across our country, never thinking that civilians would take to the highways the way that we have, and an entire industry developed along those highways, including fast food. So I remember 50s and 60s, people stopping at fast food restaurants, and when they were finished with the meals that they got in the paper cups and the paper bags and the plastic containers, they wanted to throw them away. And at that time, away simply meant out of sight. So those containers went right out the window because there was no reason not to litter. And the medians of the interstates in many cities were cluttered with paper and bags and wrappers and cups and straws for miles and miles and miles, until we developed an awareness that when you throw something away, away does not mean just out of sight. But it was a way of thinking back then, because the idea was that Earth is so vast, the oceans are so big, and there's so much land in the US that we can just dispose of things by getting them out of our sight. Well, you and I know that's all changing now, fortunately. There's a new awareness that is developing, but the thinking underlying that kind of disposal is a direct consequence of us being taught that there's nothing really special about the cosmos, nothing really special about our relationship to the cosmos. So the question is, we're running out of resources now on the planet. We're starting to look at other places. We're looking at planets to mine, the moon, for example, and the planet Mars and asteroids. Here's the question, are we going to exploit those places the way that we've exploited our own planet because of the thinking that we have been led to embrace, that everything is separate and that we are living in a dead and inert universe? Well, similar story comes with you and I. We're taught that human life is the product of random processes that just happen to occur, random mutations that just happened at the right time. Just the right atoms came together at just the right time to create just the right molecules, to create just the right proteins, to create just the right forms of energy and information for life to emerge on our planet. And when you hear that, the question is, where's the specialness? Where's the specialness if we are the product of random processes? And the implication is very similar to what's happening on the Earth. Where is our respect for biology? Where's our respect for the specialness of human life? The thinking is that life and human life is ours to exploit. It's ours to dominate. It's ours to give, and it's ours to take. And that reflection we find up showing in many societies in ways that are certainly controversial, and they're dividing us today, but they're also leading us to new understandings. Perhaps it's best summed up through a woman that I have so much respect for, Rachel Carson, one of the early environmentalists and early authors. She wrote a book in the 1960s. It was called Silent Spring. She was actually a marine biologist. The book Silent Spring was about the role of pesticides in our environment and in our lives. And what Rachel Carson said was so powerful. I remember I read it as a child, and it has stayed with me my whole life. What she said is that we only destroy what we do not value, and we can only value what we know. The crust is the thickest part of the earth, and I think the crust is riddled with catacombs, tunnels, artificial tunnels that were created from lava tubes and things like that have been used in ancient times because they exist. If they're there, why not use them? Almost universally, the creation stories of native peoples talk about emerging from underneath the earth after the times of cataclysm, where they were safe, to emerge in the new world of the surface. And I've always sensed from talking to my indigenous friends that they're talking about pre-existing caverns that can go very, very deep, but it's not a hollow earth, and there's not another sun per se living within the earth. Is it possible that beings from the past or beings from other worlds could occupy those to have, so they're not so obvious now? Absolutely. I think, I don't personally have any experience with it. I wouldn't be surprised to find that that's true. Or to find that some of the life forms of the past that we thought were extinct actually still exist in some of these places. They show up every once in a while, and you say, how could they have hidden for all this time? Bigfoot is a perfect example. The high deserts of northern New Mexico, my home, are littered with these underground caverns that have been and continue to be used for a number of different purposes. So I think that might be where the hollow earth comes. Not so much a hollow earth per se, but a tunneled crust that goes very deep that could very well appear to be hollow, the hollow earth. Does that make sense? Is that a good?
No, it does. Yeah, absolutely. That's a great Great explanation. Thank you.
If the Earth were hollow, those waves would react differently when they come back up. And I'm all about empirical science
Yes.
and being honest
Yes.
with myself.
Let's talk about vibrational frequencies. Christopher Wolf wants to know, do you consider progression of time as a change in vibration? Is the ancient past or distant future just a perceptual change in frequency?
It's a really good question. A very famous scientist once said, time is what happens to keep everything from running together. And if you think about it, I think it makes a lot of sense. Time, I believe, is fractal. And what I mean by that is the experiences that we have in one point in our lives repeat on a rhythmic, a cyclic basis, again, to a greater degree and again to a greater degree. So rather than being linear, I think time is cyclic itself. And I think our perception of time is directly linked to vibration and to emotion. It's our emotional attachment to the events as they're occurring and the ability of our emotions to link us into a quantum field in a very precise way. We are both quantum and mechanistic beings. Time is one of the greatest mysteries.
Yeah.
And human emotion that's been discounted by modern science in many respects is actually, in the ancient traditions, is the key to mastering this quantum world, the key to mastering time travel, the key to mastering healing. It's all about emotions. And no other form of life has the ability to trigger the emotions intentionally at will the way that we do as humans. I'm not saying they don't have them, but we have the ability to bring them into play when we feel they're appropriate in ways that we feel are appropriate. No other form of life, to the best of my knowledge, gets up in the morning and says, today, I'm going to trigger this kind of emotion or this kind of healing in my body in this moment.
Mandy Sims wants to know if you've discovered anything recently after the show, and anything that proves that humans have been on this planet longer than scientifically proven.
I believe that the more discoveries that are revealed, and I'm a scholar, I'm a researcher, I spend a tremendous amount of time researching new discoveries. I belong to scientific organizations, the American Association for the Advancement of Science, AAAS. I'm still active in some of the geologic organizations that I've participated with in the past. It's all about a perspective. The discoveries are there, but the discoveries are not given context. So scientists simply, they make a discovery and they put it out there. So, for example, scientists now are in agreement that human chromosome number 2 is the result of an ancient fusion of pre-existing chromosomes. That is scientifically accepted. They're stuck because there's no context for what to do with that. They say, well, what do we do with that? Well, there's another discovery. In chromosome number 7, there's a gene called the FOXP2, F-O-X-P2 chromosome. Other primates have this chromosome, and they've had it for 75 million years. It's never changed. 200,000 years ago, precisely the time when humans, anatomically modern humans, appeared, that FOXP2, 2 little letters, boom, were shifted and gave us the ability for complex language and speech in a way that no other form of life has. The fact that it happened precisely when humans emerged, the fact that it's never happened in the ape family, the precision and the intentionality that it takes to make that simple switch, and the fact that it happened at the same time, human chromosome number 2 is being fused, to me, are genetic evidence. It doesn't say that it did happen, it lends to the credibility, it correlates with the origin of humans. It tells us that our story is not evolution. There's much more to our story than human evolution. And when we can embrace that fact, then we can dedicate our brilliant minds of brilliant scientists, men and women, and the tremendous energy and the resources and the funding and the backing of the universities to revealing the new human story rather than spinning our wheels on a 150-year-old story that has gotten us nowhere in 150 years because the evidence has led us to a dead end. I talked about this a little earlier on a podcast. Here's the deal. There's a huge difference between taking the new discoveries and forcing them into a pre-existing theory like evolution and allowing the new discoveries to lead to the story that they tell. And my proposal is let's do just that. Let's allow the new discoveries to lead us to what, and be honest with ourselves about what it's saying, rather than fighting to hold on to a story that has not budged since it was proposed in 1859 with Darwin's theory of evolution. Anatomically modern humans, we showed up relatively quickly. We do not appear to have evolved slowly, gradually over a long period of time. All of a sudden, 200,000 years ago, we showed up with a brain 50% larger than our nearest primate relatives. Chimps share 98% of our DNA, gorillas, orangutans, and these are our nearest primate relatives. Our brain was 50% larger than our nearest primate relatives, and it had features such as a larger neocortex, and I'm going to talk about that in just a moment, that we had never seen, that had never appeared in another primate before. And there are genetic mutations that are responsible for our uniquely human features. Those genetic mutations appear to have occurred relatively quickly. We don't see evidence of it slowly, gradually over a long period of time. And there are multiple mutations, and what the real kicker here, and I'm just sharing, this is what the discoveries are, is that these multiple mutations occurred at the same time. It's not like one occurred and another and another. So one of those is human chromosome 2. You've heard me talk about a lot. I'm going to give you some really detailed information on that in the slides. Human chromosome 2 is a mystery because it appears to be the result of a fusion of two pre-existing primate chromosomes. So this is, I just want to be really clear on this. Whatever life those primate chromosomes belong to, they are the product of the evolutionary process, totally. We don't know. We don't know what life forms those were, but they appear to be primate. Something happened 200,000 years ago, and two of those primate chromosomes were fused and then tweaked in a relatively short period of time. I can't tell you exactly how long, but we don't see the evidence that it was a slow, gradual process over long periods of time, as you would expect in traditional evolution. And if that were the only thing that happened, you could say, you know, it's strange, but maybe that could be, just a fluke of evolution. It's not the only thing that happened. There were other mutations, and I think one of the most profound is in human chromosome number 7. I'm not going to do slides on that today, but I'm going to mention it right now. Human chromosome number 7, for 75 million years, the genes in what is called the FOXP2 assemblage of genes, they were stable. 75 million years in primates and other mammals. All of a sudden, there was a little switch, two little pieces of genetic information were switched. You've all seen the letters, the DNA, C, T, A, and G, the DNA letters that make up the human genome. There was a little switch in the CTAG that made it possible for a certain part of our brain to connect with our tongue and the muscles in our jaw so that we can have complex language, complex speech, and be able to sing. We're the only primates that we know of that can sing. You don't hear chimpanzees singing Stairway to Heaven by Led Zeppelin, and there's a reason for that. We share 98% of our DNA, but they cannot sing. And what's so interesting, and this is very well documented, the Max Planck Institute of Anthropology and the David Geffen School of Medicine at UCLA have both documented this mutation in what's called the FOXP2 gene. It happened 200,000 years ago. It happened at the same time that chromosome 2 was fused and that anatomically modern humans emerged. So we have to say, what are the odds of these extraordinary genetic mutations?
How do we awaken the potential of our appearance, what we showed up with? How do we awaken that in our world today? And this is where I invited you beginning in season number 1. Heart-brain harmony. When we harmonize these two powerful organs in our bodies into a single potent system that sets the stage, all systems go, where we optimize human potential. And once we do that, we have myriad opportunities as to what we do with that heart-brain harmony. We can activate deep states of intuition on demand, powerful immune response on demand, longevity enzymes in our body. We can wake them up on demand. We can create resilience to tremendous change, just like we're experiencing in our lives right now, on demand, and so much more. All of this is happening within this matrix. The next discovery is that science, the science that we've asked to tell us who we are, is now coming back to us with even more answers. And they're telling us that there is, in fact, a field of energy, the web or the net that our most ancient and cherished spiritual traditions have always referred to. But now scientists are referring to this as the Higgs field, the discovery in 2012 that we talked about early in this series, in this program. The Higgs field, it is out there. It is universal. It's everywhere all the time. It's been with us from the time of the primal release of energy we know as the Big Bang. We know that field is there. We also know that we are that field. Once again, it's a very different way of thinking. Every atom in your body right now is emerging from the field that permeates our existence. We are the matrix. We are the field. The next discovery tells us that we are biologically wired to interact with this field. Now, I personally believe, and this is where I'll separate science fact from my personal beliefs, the wiring is so precise, it appears to have an intentionality. So I call it a design. Now, I'm not saying who or what or why because I don't know the answer, and science doesn't know either. That's the whole point. We will only know when we begin to follow the evidence to the story it tells, rather than trying to fit the evidence into a pre-existing idea. So the new human story, I've just shared with you the essence of the new human story that has unfolded through missing links and where we are so far. The new human story, it's a story of connection, of unity, self-empowerment, self-regulation. Maybe it's no accident that the new human story is emerging now, as I mentioned before, when the world needs it the most, when globalization is forcing us together in ways we haven't seen in 5,000 years of recorded human history. Scientists knew from earlier research that humans and chimpanzees both possess this FOXP2 gene. They also knew that the human version of the gene changed or mutated at some point in the past, and that change happened really fast. It didn't happen slowly and gradually, as the theory of evolution would suggest. The mutation happened, quote, rapidly around the same time that language emerged in humans, end of quote. Well, this is a pivotal discovery because for the first time, the specific mutation in FOXP2 was scientifically linked to our capacity to create language. Additional studies took this research even further and determined when this particular change happened. According to Wolfgang Inard of the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology, the mutations in FOXP2 that make our complex language possible, quote, happened in the same time frame when modern humans evolved, end of quote. A BBC News World Edition report clarifies this relationship, and it states that our capacity for language happened when, quote, the changes to 2 single letters of the DNA code arose in the last 200,000 years of human evolution, end of quote. So the speed and the precision of the mutations in FOXP2 occurring in just the right 2 places in the DNA code are further examples of the kind of change that simply does not fit into the theory of evolution. The best science of the modern world has now given us the answer. The question now is, are we willing to accept what this DNA is telling us? Because humans are classified as the most complex and advanced member of the primate family, it was reasonable for scientists to expect that we would have more chromosomes than our less complex relatives. This is where an unexpected twist to our DNA story begins. Our nearest primate relative, as we mentioned previously, the chimpanzees, they have more chromosomes than we do, with a total of 48 in their overall genome. Ironically, humans have only 46. In other words, it looks like we're missing 2 chromosomes when we're compared to chimps. Mystery of where those chromosomes went appears to have been solved, but in doing so, however, once again, we find ourselves at the threshold of an even deeper mystery that holds even more startling implications. A closer look at our genetic map shows that what has been thought to be our missing DNA in the past isn't really missing at all. It's been with us all along, only it's been modified and rearranged in a way that wasn't obvious in the past. The second largest chromosome in the human body, forming 8% of the total DNA in our cells, human chromosome number 2, actually contains the smaller, missing chromosomes found in the chimp genome. In other words, at some point in the past, for reasons that remain controversial, 2 separate chimp chromosomes were combined into a single, larger chromosome that now is our chromosome number 2. While scientists acknowledge that the mutations definitely occurred in FOXP2 and that they happened within the time frame that correlates with the rise of the anatomically modern humans, they can't really tell us what caused that change to happen. New technology has revealed precisely what happened to create human chromosome number 2.
The goal is to allow it to serve us, but not to enslave us. In our genre, I am one of the very few people that has worked with AI. AI is not new. First of all, AI first began back in the 1930s. And they called it machine intelligence at that time. The first papers were written in the 30s. Alan Turing, some people are familiar with who he is. If you ever saw the movie, it was about the Enigma code, breaking the codes, the Allies being able to read the codes from the Germans of World War II, and that's what turned the world, the war around. And it's because Alan Turing figured out a way to be able to do that. So the idea is not new. I was programming AI in the industry in the 1980s, and I have a lot of respect for AI. And I'm not anti-AI. I think it's an amazing technology and it holds amazing potential. What's happening right now, Liz, and I'll be very honest, and our community knows this, there are many people in our community who are very fragile emotionally right now, whose hearts are very fragile, whose psyche is very fragile because all of the things that we have trusted in the past are falling away. They're being revealed as being deceptive. They're being revealed as being not what we were led to believe. So there's a segment of people that are presenting AI as a substitute for our own spiritual evolution, for example. And people are attributing things to AI that simply cannot be. AI cannot read our past lives. AI cannot read the Akashic records. But there are people who believe it can. At a high level, here's the reason: there is no interface. The AI is code. It's code. I used to program, and it's called C++, and now a higher level Python. Primarily the two languages. You look at that code on the screen. It's very sophisticated code, but it's only code. There is no interface between. Interface means there has to be a resonance between the AI and the field that is very real, that holds our memories and holds the history of our hearts and holds the history of our species. That field is there. The AI has no interface, but here's the beauty: we do. And the new scientific papers now, this is so interesting. They're looking at the human body not from a biological perspective of sticky, wet, gooey, mushy, cells. They're looking at us. They're looking at the human body from an IT perspective, information technology. And what they have found is that human DNA, and this is a quote, is a 3-dimensional fractal antenna that is tuned to multiple fields of information in the world around us. So the DNA is the interface. The DNA is the antenna that tunes to our memories, that tunes to those Akashic records. And when we change our perceptions, which is what we do in this program that you've put together, when we change our perceptions, it actually changes the shape of the DNA. It changes the shape of the antenna, which means it changes what that antenna is tuning to. So we learn to tune to new forms of information. We have that interface. AI does not have that interface. And this is one of the things, I just did a full program on this recently. It's very fresh in my mind. And the real scientists know this, but there are people out there who are deceiving our community, because to many people, the AI looks like a black box. They don't understand it. And the AI looks like it's your friend. It looks like it gets you. It looks like it's communicating with you, because the code is designed to do that, to use your words and your ideas so that you think, I'm beating around the bush. Let me give you a perfect example.
Okay.
If you ask one of these AIs that's out there and say, hey, Mr. or Mrs. AI, did I abuse my power in a past life in Atlantis? All right.
You want me to do it right now?
No, I'm just saying, look at what you've done. You've just given the code information that you believe you may have abused your power. You believe that there is an Atlantis, and I believe that as well. You believe their past lives, I believe that as well. So there's a module in the AI, it's called confirmation bias module. It's designed to confirm what it is, so that it likes you. So the AI will come back and it will say, oh yes, Gregg, not only did you abuse your power in Atlantis, but it has continued throughout history, and you might want to look at what you're doing right now. And then the person that gets that message says, oh my God, this AI really gets me. And the AI knows things about me. It's the confirmation bias code that is allowing that to happen. And so there are beautiful let me give you a beautiful application. There's an AI right now that is scouring indigenous plant websites throughout the world to find the plants that have anti-cancer properties, anti-carcinogenic properties. So here's how it's used. So when you present to your doctor a certain kind of malignancy, the AI can customize just the right indigenous plants only for you.
6 perennial questions, and I'm going to share them with you in this chart that you're seeing right now. This is an inverted pyramid. And at the bottom of the pyramid, the point at the bottom of the pyramid is where the first of our perennial questions is listed. It is the most fundamental question. It's one that we're going to explore throughout this series. The question is, what is the origin of life? Where does life come from? And I can see why that would be a foundational scientific question. And the second question is fascinating to me. It is the question of, where does human life come from? And it's asked the way that it is because what if human life does not come from where all other life comes from? It's a fascinating question. It's one that we will explore throughout this series as well. The third question is about relationships. What is our relationship to our bodies? Are we separate from our bodies and powerless to do anything when we see things happening, illness and disease within our bodies? Or are we somehow empowered to participate and influence what happens in our bodies? And I'm using those words very consciously because it's not about control and manipulation. It's about influence. Do we have the power to influence what happens at the cellular level, or even deeper at the genetic level, or even deeper at the energetic level? The next question, next of our perennial questions, is what is our relationship to the world beyond our bodies? And the question is very similar. Are we connected or are we separate? Are we empowered to participate and influence what happens in the workplace, with our families, with our jobs, with our careers, and even between nations? Or are we powerless to do anything and we just sit and watch things happen for no apparent reason, feeling helpless and powerless to do anything about it? The next question is, what is our relationship to the past? Is the past linear, as we have been led to believe and been taught in schools for the last 300 years? Is the past linear? Did civilization begin 5,000 years ago and progress in a linear fashion to the pinnacle of sophistication that we see today? Are we the only ones that have developed the technology that we have today, or have there been others? Is civilization cyclic? That's the question that science is asking. The next question, and perhaps the most fundamental beyond the origin of life, is what is the rule of nature. We are all part of nature. Nature is the foundation of our lives. What is the fundamental rule of nature? Is it a rule based in struggle and conflict, as Charles Darwin asked us to believe? Or is there something else happening? Is nature actually based in cooperation? These are the 6 perennial questions. If you were raised in the West, and if you were educated in the West in the last 150 years, you, as I, have been imbued with a story. And it is a scientific story that says the following. It says that the origin of life is completely random. The origin of human life is completely random. Our relationship to our bodies, we're told that we are separate from our bodies and pretty much powerless to do anything when it comes to the condition of healing in our bodies. And that's why we need a third party. That's why we need the intervention of a medical professional to help us, because we have that experience, because we have that belief. But there's another perspective. I said, why would you deny a soul the opportunity, a life, the opportunity to come into the world this time when there's so much opportunity for change, where one life, one idea can change the whole world in a way that we've never seen? And he said, wow, I never thought of that. So we got off the plane. I didn't see him, and then I saw him in baggage. He grabbed his bag and he's running out the door. And I said, where are you going? He says, are you kidding? After that conversation, I'm going to go home and make a baby. He said, you talked me in. So he had never thought about the world other than through the lens of fear and uncertainty, rather than opportunity for change. And I think that's an important perspective.
Well, that's the problem with this whole thing, is because we get encrusted. We're driven, the whole system, whether it's religion or families or education or government or everything, are trying through fear to constrain us in fundamental kind of ways and keep us on the track, like that young man was in the Air Force, and make sure that he doesn't waver too far from off of the track. And the essence of this transition to this new world is to disconnect from those, to see ourselves as individuals and powerful and extraordinarily capable, and not requiring all of that. There's a kind of corollary. There's an interim kind of aspect of that says, how do you get from here to where we need to go and still take advantage of the technology that we all are dependent upon, and not let it kind of capture us in the whole process? So.
John, I agree. It's hard to see it when you're in it.
Yeah.
Because we're so close to it. But 30 years from now, 50 years from now, people will look back at this little window in history and say, wow, this is the generation that had to walk between two different worlds.
Yeah.
A world that's collapsing, but we're still using it. A world that's emerging, but it's not complete. And it takes a very special person and a unique set of skills to be able to navigate without getting lost in the fear of the uncertainty. And that's why these conversations are important, because when people hear that, and I've seen this in my live audiences, they'll say, yeah, I never thought about it that way. But if you don't hear that, the suicide rates are sky high.
No, I know.
And young people, when I talk to young people, John, they're living their lives as if there is no tomorrow. They're not planning. They can't see a future because there's nothing in the narrative that offers them any hope for a future. And so when you don't see a future, you live your life very, very differently.
Well, you're making the point again in a different way about that you're being driven into this space where you're going to have to make decisions. And that it's going to either be a decision that is dominated, or the narrative that is communicated by all of the forces, the technologies, and other kinds of things that are all built around control. How do you control, and increasingly control it? And on the other hand, this new track that you and I and so many good people are interested in is full of opportunity. I mean, when in the history of humanity have we ever had a chance to build a new world? I mean, this is amazing. And you kind of got to see it in those kind of terms and realize that this is not just everything going to hell in a handbasket, which some of it certainly seems to be doing, but it's breaking the thing loose. It's childbirth almost kind of thing that opens up the possibility into a whole new space that's full of light and opportunity and peace and all kinds of things. This is a big freaking deal. This is really neat.
It is, John, and the science supports it. When you step back and you look at cycles and systems of the past, we have to go through this change because the cycles are converging in our lifetimes.
This is a story that's told from the Spanish journals when the explorers were coming over looking for new routes into this world in the 1500s. One of the routes took them around the coast of South America, and the Spanish galleons that were making this journey, sometimes the journeys took many months, up to a year, they set ashore for supplies in a place where the Spanish had never recorded being before, and they were met on the shores by the indigenous people of that area who apparently had never seen white people before, had never seen Western technology before. And fortunately for this particular story, one of the first men to meet them on the shore was the shaman of the tribe. He was the holy man. So here the holy man of the tribe meets the Spanish as they're coming ashore. They left the large ships out on the water and they came ashore in smaller rowboats. And however they communicated, in whatever language they were using, the holy man asked them, "Where did you just come from?" I mean, they've been here for years. They've never seen people like this coming up onto their shore. And however they communicated in return, the Spanish said, "We came on this little boat from that big boat with the wooden planks and the canvas sails out on the horizon of the ocean." And the holy man looked to where the Spanish were pointing, and he couldn't see that ship. The ship was there, and it was of a pattern that was so foreign to his frame of reference, it made no sense to his conscious recognition. He didn't recognize it. And as I hear this story, I often wonder, how many times does that happen in our world, in our lives? How many times do things happen right in front of us, and maybe we disallow it because it doesn't make sense in terms of our frame of reference? Is it possible there's a whole separate world going on here that we haven't recognized because we don't allow for it in our paradigm? Well, because this was a holy man, because he was a shaman, he was fascinated by the possibility that these people came from something that he couldn't see. So another individual may have dismissed it. The shaman worked with it. And eventually, what he said, in a matter of moments, he says, if I look out of the corner of my eyes and I squint just the right way and redefine the shape of my eyeball, I begin to make something out on the horizon. And in just a few moments, he taught himself how to see a pattern of matter that he had never been exposed to before. He taught himself to see that. That happened to him on the shore. Miles away was his village, and the people in his village didn't have the same experience that he had, on the one hand, and within just a couple of days, on the other hand, they too benefited from his experience because they then were able to see what was happening on the shores. How did that happen? They weren't witnessing with him on the one hand. The other hand, they learned through his experience. The term we use today is called collective resonance. And what it means to us is that every time one person chooses a new way to respond to the challenges of life, each time an individual chooses a new option, that person then becomes a living bridge for all the others who choose to follow in that person's path. It's not about imposing will on anyone. What it is about is that person now that chose a new way, that chose a new path, they have created a template of a new possibility very close to the consciousness of all others who choose to follow. And that template now becomes more accessible to the next and the next and the next. Darwin said, quote, "It may not be a logical deduction, But it is far more satisfactory to look at instincts such as ants making slaves of other ants as small examples of one general law leading to the advancement of all beings. And that law is the law that says we should multiply, we should vary, let the strongest live and the weakest die. Let the strongest live and the weakest die. This is such a dangerous way to think. And it's dangerous for a couple of reasons, particularly because of when it was introduced. Late 1800s, early 1900s. This is when the great wars were being fought. This is when the thinking that was being created of how people relate to other people. Darwin is telling us that when he saw the ants capture another colony of ants, they didn't kill them, they enslaved them and made them work. He said that is a reflection of a general law. Let the strongest live and the weakest die. This later became survival of the fittest. Darwin called it survival of the strongest, and he said this in his own words, and I want you to know that. So I'm not mincing words. Survival of the strongest. The ideas of the great genocides and the great suffering of the late 1800s, the 1900s, throughout the 20th century are directly linked to this thinking. If you look at the manifestos, you look at the writings, and you look at the links of the greatest acts of war, aggression, and genocide, the philosophies are directly based and sometimes quoted. I'm not saying Darwin intended this, but this is how a dangerous thinking like this can be misinterpreted and applied in horrible ways that create tremendous suffering in our world. And it's based on something that's not true. This is a false assumption of science, and that's the good news. That's the good news that I want to share with you right now. The best science of the modern world is now telling us one of the deepest truths, I believe, that has the greatest impact, the greatest consequence on our world as a whole, on your life and my life individually. If you think back to the inverted pyramid that began this entire series, it was in episode number 2, when we talked about the false assumptions of science. Assumption number 6 at the top of the pyramid was that the fundamental law of nature is based upon competition, conflict, and struggle. And that comes directly from Darwin's ideas that were embraced and not questioned in the late 1800s and early 1900s. It is deeply ingrained as the fabric of our very society. The economic system that's collapsing right now, the way that we're dealing with differences between nations unsuccessfully, the way that we are trying to share resources, food, water, oil, energy, communications, defense. All of these things are based in this idea of survival of the strongest in our time of extremes, as our ideas and what we think about ourselves and our beliefs are being pushed to the limits because the extremes are changing the environment where they've been applied. The ideas have been applied in the past. All those ideas are breaking down. They're not working. They can't work because they're not true. They're based in false assumptions. And this idea of cooperation versus competition, this is key. So I want to share this with you. I'm going to take a minute to do this. I think it's important. The best science of the modern world is now telling us that, in fact, the fundamental rule of nature is cooperation and what biologists call mutual aid, not competition and conflict and survival. Now, we all know that competition, conflict, and survival, they're a fact. They happen. We see them all the time. They're not the fundamental rule. And to the degree that we see violence, competition, and conflict, to the degree that we see that happening, what we're actually witnessing is how far we or any population has strayed from the harmony of the deepest truth of nature. It tells us the more violence and conflict we see, it tells us how far we've strayed from the natural laws of this world. And if we believe that we somehow are separate from nature, that we don't have to abide by the fundamental laws of nature that all the forms of life abide by, that is the opening to our demise. We've seen this happen in the past with other civilizations and other cultures. There's a powerful lesson that we can learn from this. And our own science, the best science of the modern world, gives us the reason to change our thinking. We don't have to do it on faith. We don't have to do it on trust because we've asked science to tell us the deep truths of our lives. Now science is revealing those truths. The question is, will we embrace those truths? Well, here is the truth of what Darwin said about cooperation. There was a study that was done. Over 400 papers were written asking the question about competition in conflict. Specifically, the question was this: what is the optimum amount of competition in any situation, in any place? And when I say competition, I just want to be very clear what I'm saying. I'm not talking about a friendly game of soccer or chess or checkers at the family dinner table. When we say competition, this is what biologists call violent competition, okay? What is the optimum amount of violent competition in the world? Over 400 studies came up with the same answer. And once again, for clarity, I want to read to you directly the results of that study. In his book entitled No Contest, The Case Against Competition, Alfie Kahn wrote, quote, "The ideal amount of violent competition in any environment, in the classroom, in the workplace, in the family, in the playing field, is none." He said, violent competition always is destructive. The protocol for a preemie is immediately to take them from one another and to separate them in separate incubators. So first of all, can you imagine, here you are in your mother's womb, and I don't know how consciously we're aware, but I know that we're aware. You know what it feels like to have another presence there. And immediately come out into a hospital room, be placed face down with your naked back and the bare hot lights, and then separated from everything that you've known or held dear for those 7 or 8 months in the womb. If you can imagine what that feels like. That was the protocol that was followed. Preemies are about 7 months old. They were immediately separated from one another, placed face down in separate incubators in separate infant ICU units. Immediately, one of the little girls began to fail. Her vital signs started to drop. And within just a few moments, she was very, very close to death. And the nurse that was attending said, "We're going to lose this one if we don't do something." She broke the protocols. She went and picked up that little baby girl and carried her into the other ICU unit with the sister that she'd shared her womb with for those 7 months. And she placed her face down next to her sister, the stronger of the two. And this tells me that it's not something learned, it's instinctual, because her stronger sister instinctively reached out with her arm and put her arm around the shoulder of her sister who was dying. Okay, can you feel that feeling? Can you feel it right now? Do you feel that feeling, everybody? I feel it right now. I've seen this a million times. I've got goosebumps. If I cry, my voice is gone, so I won't do it. Can you feel the feeling in your body right now? Okay, the reason I'm sharing this, if I ask you, if I said, have that feeling, could you have done it? Maybe, maybe not. The feeling that you're feeling right now, that is the quality of the feeling. I wanted you to have that experience. That's the quality of the feeling that heals without attachment to the outcome, without judgment. You just found yourself in such a powerful place. That feeling is a language. It's a language that we were conditioned to forget about 1,700 years ago. It is a language that speaks to the stuff our universe is made of, speaks to God, if that's what you'd like the term you'd like to use. And it is that language that heals your body and the bodies of your loved ones. It's the language that brings about peace in our world. It's the language that speaks to the quantum stuff that our world is made of and allows it to conform to our heart's desire in a participatory universe, as John Wheeler states. Immediately, when she did this, the little girl that was dying, her vitals stabilized, and she got stronger and stronger and stronger, and they didn't separate them again. And the two of them lived, and they live, they're alive today. And all it was simply the power of touch. How much power do you and I really have to change our world, or to change our bodies, or to change the things that we choose to change in our world. We know we're not limited by the laws of biology. We're not limited by the laws of physics, at least the way we know those laws today. The keys to shatter the paradigm of false limits is first to understand that we are not bound by the limits of what others have said to us. If you're free of the laws of biology and you're free of the laws of physics, then you tell me what it is that you cannot accomplish in your personal body, in your life, in your world, in your goals, in your love for others. But the key is it's got to come from that pure place that you just experienced. I caught you off guard. Because if I told you were going to have that, you would have guarded against it. To whatever degree you felt that feeling, give it a name so you can call it to yourself again. Because that's the place where our power really begins. How much power do we have to change our world in the divine matrix? We've got all the power we need to create all the change that we choose. That's how much power there is. The key to all of this is that we've got to see ourselves as part of the universe rather than separate from it, and become in our lives the things that we choose to experience in our world. Become the nurturing that you'd like for others to share with you. Become that compassion. Become the understanding. And when we do that, we know that power to do precisely that is something that lives in every single one of us. How do you feel about what you saw in here today? Is that meaningful? We're not finished yet. What we've done is a circuitous route. When I go into the monasteries of Tibet, we don't have to talk about the left brain because the Tibetan monks and nuns don't work that way. You and I are conditioned to think and to use our filters of discernment and logic. And I think it's good that we do that. So if we want to change our beliefs, we need to have a reason to make those changes. You've just seen that the DNA of your body affects the physical world around you, and that your emotions will change that DNA that's changing your physical world. And you've just seen the power of emotion to heal a woman. If she had followed up with a Western medical model, she wouldn't be in this world any longer. She said, "Thank you for your opinion. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to go try something else." I'm not saying that's the only way. I'm saying that it is a way to understand our relationship to the world. That's why I chose to share that video. The abbot in the monastery, he said, "You've never seen our prayer because a prayer can't be seen. A prayer is a feeling." Biomagnetic field. And when you feel the feelings of care and deep emotion, and this was untrained. This was a spontaneous emotional release. What it told our scientists is that collectively we are part, not separate from, part of the very fields of this earth that sustain all life, to such a degree that the fields of the earth that connect everything are registering this, and the satellites, listen to this, the satellites are 22,000 miles above the surface of the planet. And they're picking this up. And the scientists said, "Oh my God." And that has led to a series of studies. The studies now have confirmed all life, bar none, every leader of every nation, all presidents, all employees of all corporations, every human, all life is connected through these magnetic fields. This isn't a quantum field. This is a field we can measure with conventional equipment. The quantum field is there to an even greater degree, but this we know for certain. There's no doubt. There's no guessing. Scientific fact. Everything is connected through these fields beyond any reasonable doubt. We are part of the fields that triggered the change. That led to a scientific hypothesis that strong collective emotion has a measurable impact on the field of this earth. If we create the right feelings, those are the feelings that are preserved by the indigenous wisdom of our past and our most cherished spiritual traditions. This is what they were trying to tell us. 5,000 years ago, this planet went through a world age change. Our ancestors lived through it. And immediately they began to write to you and me, and they said, "Wow, this thing just happened." I'm paraphrasing. They said that when I wrote the Bible, I didn't know so many people would read it. So I'm just teasing. They began to write to us. They dedicated entire texts, entire temples, inner experiences that became spiritual traditions that had religions wrapped around them to separate us from ourselves. Go past the rules, go past the dogma, go past the interpretations, and go right to the root of those teachings. How many of you believe in reincarnation in this room? Anybody? Oh, well. Okay, so when I say our ancestors of the past, who may I be talking about? Is it possible that a long time ago, you and I lived through a great world age shift and we said, note to self, and we left things for ourselves then that we thought we might recognize now that would trigger in us now the memory of a way of being that we knew then that would help us get through what we're going through now. Is that possible? Okay, so maybe you're the choir and we're talking to the choir. Maybe that's exactly what's happening. They began leaving us the information, the clues, the keys to an inner experience that would help us navigate these great changes in our outer world. Our own science is just now catching up with that. The Institute of Heart Math, H-E-A-R-T, capital M-A-T-H, all one word, a pioneer research organization based in Northern California, exploring the power of the human heart to go way beyond pumping blood in your bodies. Those of you that are affiliated with Heart Math, you know the work they've done. If you are not, what I want to share with you is that Heart Math is now pioneering the first of its kind science-based initiative to make use of this data. They are pioneering a science-based initiative that is called the Global Coherence Initiative. Remember, coherence is a good thing, personally. If we can create a lot of coherence collectively, everyone benefits.